Hello, my name is Kim. I am a first aid trainer for FirstAidPro Australia. This is my story about my daughter. When it comes to bee bites, we're no stranger to bee bites. I have 3 children. We have a big bee's nest in the back of our yard. My children had been playing in the yard throughout the months, standing on bees. I had a very good supply of antihistamine and numbing cream and some gels for sting bites. My younger 2 children had been bitten by bees before on their feet. They just had a bit of redness and swelling, so I just used an ice pack and some cream and an antihistamine. That was their normal reaction. That was fine. One day I was home from work, folding the washing in the laundry. My daughter had come up to me to ask me for some clothing. As she walked into the laundry, a bee fell from the light and fell onto her back. As it fell onto her back, it stung her between the shoulder blades on her back. I instantly got her to spin around. I scraped the stinger out of the skin. I walked her to the house. I put on an ice pack and I gave her an antihistamine. And I said to her, just sit down, just relax. It'll settle soon. Here's a sip of water. As she was sitting at the kitchen table, she'd come out to me and said, rash, I'm getting a bit of a rash on my chest. So as a mum, instinctually, we know when things are starting to escalate or go wrong. Something inside of me just said, oh, that's not quite right. That she's got a bit of a rash on the chest, although it had bitten her between the shoulder blades. Probably shouldn't have transferred to the chest. So I walked outside, I called 000. When I was talking to the emergency call operator, they'd said to me that they were going to send an ambulance just in case it was an allergic reaction to the bee. I then hung up the phone, I walked back inside. I reassured my daughter that everything was fine. I kept her nice and calm. I said to her that I'd just called the ambulance just in case. I didn't think that anything was going to happen. I was just calling them. When she was sitting at the kitchen table, she then told me that as she was starting to swallow, her throat was feeling quite itchy and hard to swallow. At this point, knowing what to do for first aid, I walked back outside, away from my daughter, called 000 and said, this is definitely an allergic reaction. I definitely do need medical assistance. They said to me, don't worry, we'd already sent the ambulance just in case they're 3 minutes away. I said, fantastic. They asked me if somebody was inside with her at the time. I said, yes. So they said, go wait out the front for the ambulance and then you can walk them through to the property. So as I was waiting at the gate and walked the ambulance through to the property, I'd sat down and done an assessment of my daughter. As they were assessing her, they said it was quite an allergic reaction to the bee. They didn't have any concerns at that point in time that it was something other than an allergic reaction. So they did say to me, we're going to put her into the ambulance and we're going to take her to the hospital for observations. Because it didn't seem like it was such an emergency, I followed in the car to the hospital because I knew that would probably be there for quite a long time. As I was following the ambulance to the hospital, they started running red lights and turned their sirens on. I then knew obviously that something had happened in the ambulance for such urgency. As I arrived at the hospital and walked into emergency where they were wheeling my daughter in. When I approached my daughter who was laying on the ambulance bed, as I walked in, she was swollen from head to toe, so fully swollen now. So when she'd left my house, she just had a bit of a red rash up the top of her chin and on her throat. She was now swollen from head to toe, fully swollen, eyes were shut, lips were huge like duck lips. Whole face, whole body was covered in hives and rashes. They'd notified me that in the ambulance they'd given her adrenaline in the ambulance and that it was still a continuing reaction. They were very concerned that it wasn't settling the reaction, so we had to wait around for a doctor to come through. They said to us that they're going to give a second dose of adrenaline just to make sure airways were open. After they introduced the second dose of adrenaline, her body started to settle. She was still hived from head to toe overnight, but her breathing was back to normal. So overnight, they kept us overnight. She still had a bit of a red rash the next day, but then we were told that she is now allergic to bees and severely anaphylactic. What I learned from watching my daughter have an allergic reaction is that if it's anaphylaxis, it's quite a moving, fast rash and it affects the airways quite quickly. So if you've got somebody that's saying to you, oh, my throat's a bit scratchy, or when I'm swallowing it feels a bit funny, or their lips feeling tingly, or their tongue's feeling tingly, after being exposed to something, it's definitely an allergic reaction that might be anaphylaxis. Now, because of this, my daughter has to carry 2 EpiPens EpiPens on hand at all times. So she carries those in her laptop bags at school, or if at home, she carries a backpack around when we go to places. I also now carry 2 EpiPens in my car, just in case she forgets her EpiPens on the day or if we go somewhere. I would highly suggest getting yourself an EpiPen and carrying it somewhere that goes with you all the time, because in an allergic reaction, you need an EpiPen. What you can do as a prevention for children, if you're just unsure if they're allergic, you can go and get a skin prick test. What it tests is they prick your skin with quite a number, so between around 10 to 40 allergens. If once you're tested, you're having an allergic reaction to that, then they notify you that you're having an allergy to whatever it is that you're being tested for.